Welcome, everyone. My name is Nicole, and I'm a program manager with the nonprofit Solar Oregon. We've been doing solar and storage education for over 15 years, and we're excited that you could join us today for our How to Go Solar and Storage workshop. Today, we're going to cover the basics of how battery and storage work. We'll be looking at current incentives for solar and storage, and we'll discuss next steps if you're looking to find a contractor and how you can find a reliable contractor within the Trade Ally Network. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end, so feel free as we go through this webinar to put any questions you may have in the Q&A box. We'll be using the chat today to post resources where you can connect at our website or resources for community solar. So check the chat for resources and any questions you have, throw them in the Q&A. So a little bit more about Solar Oregon. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that's been around for over 45 years. Our mission is to provide reliable and impartial consumer education, working to build a clean energy community. And we do this by performing outreach, having workshops such as this one. We also do showcases for solar and storage. And we do tabling events in the community as well. We're a member-based nonprofit. And so thank you to all of our existing members. Here's some information about membership and how you can get involved with us. And I will go ahead and put the resources in the chat now. And I'll repost that as we continue through this webinar. This webinar today is going to be recorded and posted to the Solar Oregon YouTube page. One of the showcases that we do is our annual Go Zero tour. So that's actually coming up this weekend, so right around the corner. There are still some tickets available if this is something you'd be interested in. We have a virtual component as well as an in-person component. So if you're able to attend in person, our homes this year are focused in North and Southeast Portland, and we also do have one home in Lake Oswego. And so that tour is open house style from 1 to 5, and you could go to however many homes that you would like that are on the tour between 1 to 5 this Saturday. And then the virtual component, there's a Go Zero website for 2024 where you can check out videos of each of the sites, learn a little bit more about each of the site hosts and their solar journey. We have another event this evening, our Solar Social, and so this is a networking event, and we usually have speakers from solar and green tech come in and speak on different topics. So it's a nice, relaxed way to engage with community members, industry professionals, and just general solar enthusiasts. All right. We hope you can join us at this event as well. It's at Helioterra Wine in Southeast Portland. This workshop series is supported by the Energy Trust of Oregon. Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit established in 2002, and they provide resources to help enable customers of investor-owned utilities in our state to use energy efficiently and gain access to renewable energy. They offer key incentives for solar installation as well as battery storage. So thank you, Energy Trust. Just a little housekeeping. Like I said earlier, just put any questions that you have throughout this presentation in the Q&A, and we'll be having a Q&A session after the presentation. Usually the presentation is about 30 minutes or less, and then Q&A is the remainder of the time. So feel free to put up any questions that you might have. So we'll jump right into it and look at how solar works. So this diagram here shows the components in a residential grid-tied system. You can see to the left the PV or photovoltaic panel. So that's the solar panel that is taking in the sunlight and converting that into electricity. The type of electricity that that will create is direct current or DC. And so we need a special component called an inverter or microinverter that converts that DC electricity to alternating current or AC electricity, which is used by the appliances and outlets in our home. So once that inverter does its job to convert from DC to AC, that electricity will flow into your electric panel where then it can flow to the outlets in your home and power your electronics. In this grid-tied system, you get a special utility meter called a bidirectional meter. And this meter measures the flow of electricity coming out of your system and flowing out to the grid. So anything you're not using at your home would flow back out onto the grid. And then it also measures the flow of electricity from the grid. So at times where production might be low and you're consuming more energy, you can pull from the grid, and that utility meter is going to be measuring that. And we'll see it reflected on a bill example later in the presentation. So here are some close-up photos of the inverters that I was talking about. The photo to the left shows a string inverter. And so this was more common previously. Some newer systems are utilizing microinverters. They both work well here in Oregon, and some have different advantages or disadvantages. With the microinverters, instead of that inverter being connected to your entire array, the microinverter is usually connected to 1 to 3 panels. So both work, and when you work with a contractor to design your system, you can ask them about what inverter they're looking to incorporate in that design. So here in Portland, roof mounting is really common. So we tend to see roof mounting in more urban areas, but ground mounting is also another option if you have a little bit more open land, or if you have a roof that maybe does not support solar panels being installed upon. There's also another option called solar roof tiles. So this is where the solar is not just panels that are added to your roof, it's also the roofing material. So it acts as your roof and as the panels. This technology can be more expensive, so that is something to keep in mind. And not all contractors do this type of installation. So if you are interested in solar roof tiles, it's good to connect with a contractor that has experience with this type of installation and also ask them for testimonials about other projects they've done utilizing these roof tiles so you can see how the other customers they installed the roof tiles on are working with that installation. Here in Oregon, we have a special arrangement that allows us to gain credit for the excess electricity that is sent back out onto the grid, and that is called net metering. So net metering here in our state varies based on the utility and the agreement with the utility provider that you have. But basically the idea is when you have a grid-tied system, when you produce excess electricity, you can export that to the grid, and that bidirectional meter is going to measure that. And then, let's say in a winter month, shown on like the right side of this image here, it's cloudy, maybe it's rainy, so you're not able to produce as much. So you might need to draw from the grid. And so importing energy from the grid is an option when you have a grid-tied system. And so you can tap into those bank of credits that you built in the summer months when you export energy to the grid and be able to access those when you need to draw from the grid. Here's an example of that and how it might look on your energy bill. So you can see the meter reading at the beginning of the period and the meter readings at the end of the period. And so in this example, the homeowner actually produced more electricity than they consumed. So they actually gained net metering credits. And that net metering credits get added to their banked excess generation credits. And so they can pull from those when they need to import energy from the grid. And on the right side, you might be wondering what those charges are. So if you are a grid tied system, you still have interconnection fees to be connected to the grid, but that bill is still a lot smaller than a typical energy bill. So how do you decide how big of a solar system you need? And because solar is so customizable, there are many different options for sizing and configurations. And the biggest factor that's going to impact how that design is put together is looking at your energy electricity consumption. So when you look to get solar, you'll be sharing previous energy bills with your solar installer so they can see what your consumption is and look to match a system to fit your needs. Other factors that can impact the system size are your available roof space. The code in Oregon has certain roof setbacks that are required when the panels are installed. And then also your budget, and then the aesthetics. So if you're part of an HOA, they can have rules about how the solar is installed on your roof, such as maybe it can't be on a street facing roof. But they cannot tell you that you cannot have solar. So they might impact how the system is designed or installed, but they cannot prohibit you from installing solar. Solar is measured in kilowatts. So often system sizes with a number and then followed by kW. So in Oregon, the average size is about 8 kW or kilowatts. And before you get solar, the contractor will look at some aspects to see if your home is right for a solar installation. So these are good things for you to keep in mind as you start your solar journey. One is having access to the sun. So you need to have access to the sun in order to create electricity from that sunlight. And so that's an important factor. You might have shade due to large trees or other buildings. And so just because you have some shade, that doesn't mean you can't get solar. If you have a lot of shade, then maybe you're not a candidate for solar because you won't be producing enough electricity for it to power your home. But trees are still good. They have a lot of other beneficial benefits. And you can still be involved in renewable energy in other ways. Maybe if you have a shaded roof, you could look into ground mounting if you have access to some more land or another building that is on site and see about getting solar on that instead. You can also participate in community solar. And so that's where the array is offsite and you become a subscriber to the energy that is produced through that solar installation. And so there are ways that you can still support renewable energy and be involved. And with community solar, there's a few different models and different organizations that work with that. And some of them, you have a monthly subscription, and it can save you a certain percentage on your bill. And then others allow you to also be an investor in that solar project. And so if you cannot get solar on your roof for a specific reason, community solar could be an option for you. Roof complexity also plays a role in installing solar. So to install solar, if you have a simple roof, um, that's going to be easier to install on because you can have an uninterrupted array. The pitch of your roof is also going to impact your ability to go solar. If you have a very steep roof, that can impact the solar access that you get, depending on where your solar is installed. And also, if you have a really steep or complex roof, sometimes that can increase the design and labor costs of your installation. So those are good factors to keep in mind. One of the most important factors is your roof life or age. And so for solar, you want to have enough roof life that you don't have to uninstall your panels. Um, let's say you had not very many years left in your roof and you install the panels on the roof. Panels have 25 years of about 25 years of life. So in order to replace your roof, you'd have to uninstall the panels, and then put in your new roof and then reinstall the panels. And so that can add costs for deinstallation and then reinstalling. So that's really important to consider. If you know that you're going to be getting a new roof soon, it can be really beneficial to time those so that you are installing solar to match that new roof. And so the roof and panel life line up. If you're working with a roofing contractor and a solar contractor, sometimes it can also be beneficial to let them know the projects you're working on. So letting the roofer know I'm looking to install solar with this contractor and letting the solar installer know that you're re-roofing. So that if they need to coordinate on any of those project pieces, they can do that. And so that can be beneficial if you have that opportunity. Roof structure can also impact your ability to go solar. Uh, modern homes tend to have additional trusses, like the image on the left, that meet the code for installing panels. So when your contractor comes out to your site, they'll be looking at if your roof can support the panels based on code. And so if you do have a roof that doesn't meet those structural requirements, there could be additional engineering work that needs to be done, which could impact the cost. So now that we just went over the basics of solar, we're going to jump right into battery storage. It's important to know that your solar system by itself does not allow you to use the solar electricity during a power outage. So to do this, you would need a battery. This ability to use power when the grid is down is called energy resilience. And solar and battery storage are complementary with each other. So, solar makes the battery more effective by recharging it, and your battery allows you to access your solar electricity independently from the grid. Here's a photo of what a solar plus storage installation might look like with solar that's roof mounted. A battery can usually be in a garage or on the side of the house. Power outages vary for their causes and frequency and duration. So short outages can be from storms or squirrels. In Oregon, we're experiencing more public safety power shutoffs. If there's fire risk, and those can be a longer outage. And then here in the Pacific Northwest, we also face the unique risk of a large earthquake. So when you're thinking about adding battery storage for energy resilience and to be able to access during an outage, it's important to think about what type of outage you're looking to withstand. When it comes to picking a battery, there are many brands and chemistries on the market. There's also new technologies that are being worked on that'll be coming out as well. Currently, lithium iron phosphate batteries are the most common. And something that's important to know, if you do have multiple batteries, usually you stick within the same brand and you don't mix and match brands. But under that brand, they will have different module sizes. So whatever brand of battery you have, if you get an additional battery, you usually will stick with that same brand. It's important to set your expectations properly about what a battery can do and what it cannot do. Even if you don't use much electricity, a single battery would not be able to back up an entire home for a significant amount of time. So there's something called a partial backup. And so in this scenario, certain circuits in your home receive power from the battery, but the rest of your home will still lose power during an outage. If you do want to do a whole home backup, you would need enough batteries to match your consumption, and that could be cost prohibitive. So that is something to consider. When you get a partial home backup, the way you divide your home into sections that are backed up and sections that are not is based on the breakers in your electrical panel. So sometimes this will require a second electrical panel to be added to your system for essential loads. There are some new technologies like smart electrical panels, um, where you would only need one electrical panel. So that might look like an upgrade instead of adding a second one. Um, and so basically, these electrical panels are wired to the battery and then connected to the circuits that you're looking to back up. Battery system sizing entails a conversation with your contractor, just like the design for your solar. And there's really two important questions that you want to consider. One is what needs power during an outage, and the other is how long do these things need power. So it's pretty common for people to choose to do partial backup and backup uh, key electronics, having your refrigerator backed up, a common space where you can have lights that still work and outlets where you can plug in your cell phone or laptop. If you're interested in installing a battery, when you install can impact the design. And if you're impacting the design, that can impact the cost. So if you are installing solar and you think you might want to add a battery later, that's good to let your contractor know so that they can plan that into the system design and where that battery will hook up. Um, Many folks do retrofit their existing systems to add more solar panels or add a battery. And if you have a connection still with the installer who did your first install, that's a good place to start and just see what it would look like to make those additions. And then I'll share the Trade Ally network resource later in this presentation as well. Batteries can require a lot of space. They're not as big usually as the ones shown in this photo, but they do have to be installed based on code. And so they will need space and can't just be shoved in a cupboard. So that'll be considered in the design as well. Now we're going to jump right into the current incentives that are available here in our state for solar and battery storage. So the ITC is a dollar for dollar tax credit, meaning that you can reduce the taxes you owe by 30% of the cost of your solar and or battery storage installation. So this is an incentive that you don't receive immediately. You would apply for this incentive when you file your taxes, and you do have to have tax liability or owe taxes to claim this credit. Something that is helpful about this credit is you can claim it over a few years. So if you don't have enough tax liability to cover the whole credit in 1 year, you can apply it over a few years. So at Solar Oregon, we are not tax professionals. We share this information as an educational resource. But whenever making a large financial decision about taxes, it's great to connect with your tax professional to make sure that this is being claimed correctly on your taxes. There are a few things to keep in mind about this tax credit. It covers both the cost of solar and storage, as well as solar roof tiles. The incentive is straightforward, easy to claim. You just need to do some additional forms when you file your taxes. And then there is a lot of misinformation out there about this tax credit. So again, a good reason to connect with a tax professional. But one of those common pieces of information that is interpreted is that you can claim roof costs in this credit, and re-roofing cannot be claimed under this credit. So very important to keep in mind when you are planning and filing for this. There are also cash incentives that are offered by the Energy Trust of Oregon for PGE and Pacific Power customers here in our state. There is a $1,000 solar incentive for PGE customers, and they also have a $500 per kilowatt hour storage incentive, and that is up to 6,000. So depending on how large your battery will fluctuate on how much you can claim for that. And then if you're a Pacific Power customer, the solar incentive is $1,200, and storage is the same at 500 per kilowatt hour, up to 6,000. It's really important to know, in order to receive this incentive, you must have your system installed by a Trade Ally contractor who is part of the Energy Trust Trade Ally network. And so if you are a PGE Pacific Power customer, it's helpful to get a quote from some of those trade allies. One, because they're pre-vetted, usually more locally based and reliable, and then also you can they apply for these credits for you on your behalf. Energy Trust of Oregon also has an income qualified increased incentive. And so you can claim if you're a PGE customer or a Pacific Power customer. And again, you would need to work with a Trade Ally contractor. But these are great to look into to see if you can qualify, as this would help your out-of-pocket cost. The ITC, or federal tax credit, you wouldn't have that impacting your out-of-pocket costs, since you have to file that when you do your taxes. And just to recap some reasons the cost of solar and storage vary: the size of the system, any upgrades that might need to be done, from re-roofing, structural analysis, or electrical panel upgrades, can impact the cost. Your access to incentives will also impact the cost. And this is very similar for storage as well. Solar and storage systems are very customizable. So just keeping that in mind when you review quotes or have questions about cost. We're going to jump right into some sample budgets that show some different scenarios about if you're getting just solar, or if you decide to get solar plus storage, or if you add storage later. And please keep in mind, these are just ballpark figures. Your system is going to be different than this system that we use in our example. So this is just to help get some numbers on the page, but your system will have different needs and designs that will look different than this. But in this example, we're assuming an 8 kilowatt solar system. And so we have the cost before incentives, and we show a couple different customer types. So if you're a Pacific Power customer, a PGE customer, and then if you are income qualifying, or LMI, and can receive some of those, or qualify for the income qualified incentives. So we can see those customer types in the columns here. And so let's just take a look here. The Energy Trust incentives are upfront, so you can see those impacting the out-of-pocket cost. And then that ranges depending on the customer type. And then after the out-of-pocket cost, we look at the federal tax credit being applied, and that's helping with the final savings before the energy savings once you have solar. So you can see in these different customer types that it can bring the cost down anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000, depending on the incentives you're able to access, and what customer type you are. And so here's an example, looking at if you installed solar and storage together. And so here we're assuming an 8 kilowatt solar system and a 13.5 kilowatt hour battery. And so you can see that the initial cost, because you're doing battery and storage, is more than just adding solar. And then looking at the different incentives and tax credits, those can help um, your final cost come down anywhere from 20 to $25,000, which is very helpful. And then we talked a little bit earlier about if you add storage after to an existing system, that can impact the cost. So the initial cost is a little bit higher, and that might be because the connections need to be rewired in order to incorporate that battery storage into your existing system. And then still looking at accessing incentives for solar and battery storage and seeing what that can save you. So those are just some examples to help with thinking about the numbers. But again, your system is going to be totally different, and will be based on your needs, the available roof space you have, and will involve a really detailed discussion with your contractor as they try to design a system and build that into a quote for you. So financing is common for solar because it is a large upfront cost. So some homeowners will obtain a loan through a bank they already have an existing relationship with. Some contractors partner with different credit unions to offer loans. And some of these loans may allow you to refinance after you claim the ITC or federal tax credit, which can help minimize the total interest you owe. One good thing to remember is with any financial decision like this, you want to make sure that you're reviewing it, looking at the fine print, making sure it's a, a feasible and appropriate financial decision for your home and your family. And things like looking at the dealer fees, seeing if there's like any other hidden fees, making sure you pay attention. That's super important. And you can also look to get advice of a financial professional to help you see if it's the right choice. So you know the basics now of solar and storage. And if you're still interested, these would kind of be the next steps you could take if you wanted to move forward at looking at what like a system might look like for your specific home. So we talked about the Trade Ally Network. So besides offering incentives for solar, Energy Trust of Oregon has a certification program for contractors to help ensure a high quality of workmanship. And Energy Trust Trade Ally contractors have been vetted. They're the only contractors who can access those cash incentives that we shared earlier. Sometimes they're local and are used to working with customers in your specific area. And so I'll put the resources in the chat again so folks can either engage with our website or check out the Trade Ally Network. There's a solar bid tool that is part of the Energy Trust of Oregon website that will connect you to the Trade Allies and the Trade Ally Network. And it's a quick form that only takes 3 to 5 minutes. So you can put in what you're looking for, where your location is, and they'll connect you to some of those Trade Allies. We always recommend getting at least 3 quotes if you can for contractor work. Sometimes that is not feasible if you are in a rural part of Oregon, so that's something to keep in mind. But definitely, if you're able to get 3 so you can compare and choose the best design and quote that fits what you're looking to achieve with your system. And if you connect with a contractor, They will work with you to create a design for your home. If you like what you see, they'll have a contract that you would review and then sign, and then the installation process would begin. So your contractor would help complete paperwork for the Energy Trust of Oregon incentives. They would help with permitting, the installation, the tax credit, because that comes later when you're filing your taxes. That would be something that you would do. Permitting can vary depending on where you are, what county you're part of. Multnomah County can take a little bit longer here in Portland. So that is something to keep in mind. Once all the paperwork is complete, installation is usually pretty quick. If you have a complicated system with a lot of batteries, that would take more around 4 days instead of the quick 1 to 2 days. And then your contractor is going to manage the inspections and interconnection. Once you're interconnected to the grid, you'll be producing renewable energy right at your home that you and your family can use. And we're going to jump right into the Q&A. We mentioned that you can't claim re-roofing as part of the 30% tax credit, but what if you use solar tiles for your new roof? So I do believe solar tiles qualify. And then is there a formula for what percentage you can claim? So it's 30% of your cost to install the solar or battery storage or solar roof tiles. But then that will also depend on your tax liability or what you owe in that year.